once you take your sample out, it's cool enough to handle. What I usually do, tell my students, is I have them mark an initial line to indicate some direction, because it gets hard to know the specific direction that you're going to be going in, or that you need to go in. So I tell them, usually I give an initial indicator with a mark on the top, the marker. And what we're going to need to do, there's already initial markings from the abrasive cutting wheel, and they're going in the same, about the same direction as the line that's there, the line that I have already drawn. So what we need to do during the polishing process, we're going to be removing and prepping the surface of the sample for etching. But in order to do that, we need to get it to a mirror polish, a mirror finish. And what we're going to have to go through, what you're going to have to do is go through the steps of 240, 320, 400, 600, a coarse and a fine polish. Once you go through all those, we can go and etch. This is going to take a little bit of time, and it's going to take a little bit of effort, but it's not something that's unbearable. We're going to go ahead and start the sample off, and we need to create perpendicular abrasions to the ones that are currently on here. So I'm going to hold my sample to where that line is vertical, and I'm going to start creating new abrasions that are perpendicular to the ones that are here, perpendicular to this horizontal line. Before we begin that, all I'm going to do is just wet the surface. You don't have to do all of them right now. I'm just going to start off with 240, and you need to create new abrasion marks that remove the prior abrasions that were created from the grinding wheel or the abrasive wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and apply pressure with my index finger in the middle just to have even pressure, and all I'm going to do is just use my index and my thumb to slide the sample or glide the sample up and down. I'm not applying a lot of pressure. I don't have to put a lot of force. The more force or the more pressure you apply to the sample, the deeper the abrasions are gonna happen. The deeper the abrasions, the harder they're gonna be able to come out on the next grit size. Right? So just enough pressure where you hear the material removing. And again, I'm just applying pressure with my index finger, up and down motions. That's all. You don't have to go super fast, you don't have to go super slow, just a moderate speed, moderate pressure. And you always want to apply a little bit of water to remove any of the remaining material. Right? So the material that we're removing will stay on the sandpaper if you don't apply some of the fluid to remove it. Again, it will create more abrasions, deeper abrasions or scratches that you don't want. Just applying the pressure, creating some scratches. You'll notice that eventually over time that it's going to change direction. You cannot move to the next grit size until all the abrasions or scratches are in the same direction of motion. So for 240, I cannot move to 320 until all my scratches are perpendicular to this line. Once the entire surface has uniform abrasions in the same direction, that's when I'll go ahead and move to the next grit size. I'll move to 320. When you move to 320, you'll rotate your sample 90 degrees. So originally your sample was at horizontal and the line direction or orientation for 240. When we move to 320, we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. So our alignment for that line has become vertical now. We'll do new abrasions that are going to be perpendicular to the abrasions that you had on 240. That process you'll do throughout up to 600. Once you finish at 600, you should have a very nice polish on it. Once you finish the 600, we'll move to the coarse and fine, where we will receive an even better mirror polish finish before we head off to etching. All right, so we have it on. I'm not gonna turn on the water. It gets all squirrely with the water on. So I'm just gonna use the beaker from the water, wet the surface of the pad. We have a coarse media and a fine media. The solution settles at the bottom. There's water that's in here. but you can see the sediment of where the particles have settled. You need to give it a shake to distribute and suspend those particles in the fluid, or in the water in this case. So once we do that, we're going to spray the surface. So you don't have to go insane. You don't have to spray it everywhere. Just a little goes a long way. Or you're going to be placing your sample. You never want to mix your coarse with your fine, and you don't want to mix your fine with your coarse. So we're going to start off with your sample. Again, same thing. We don't have to worry about orientation on this one. So we can just place it down. We're going to apply pressure with the index finger. And just our other fingers will just hold. Can you pass me the beaker? Again, this is where it helps to have a partner. Just applying some water in the middle as the rotate is going to want to pull the water out. Again, we need to have water in order to remove any material that's on the pad itself. Right? So the water is always necessary consistently. You'll do this for the first pad, which is the coarse, with the coarse media, polishing sediment. You can reapply as much as you need. Just be sure that you shake it every single time to suspend that solution. So you want to shake it before you reapply. Again, do not mix up the coarse with the fine. Before moving to the fine, just rinse off the surface in this sink, or with the beaker. You can just rinse it off here, that's fine. Just to remove any of the particles from the coarse that are left behind before moving to the fine. Second note that you really want to consider is, at this stage, we're going to be getting a mirror polish or mirror finish on it. You never want to take your finger and rub it over the surface. If you take your finger and rub it over the surface, it's going to create abrasions. We don't want that at this stage. It's going to cause an issue later on when we deal with etching. So take your, here you can take your time, but it's up to the machine itself to do the work. You're just holding it there. Do be careful that, yes, this is a moving component. It's an instrument that moves, rotates. If your hand gets tired, just go ahead and pull the sample off. Take turns with your partner. Fatigue does sit in, and when fatigue happens or sets in, you can lose your sample. And when you lose your sample, you start making mistakes. You're going to want to reach in and try to grab it. If you do lose your sample when it rolls around, tumbles inside the instrument, just turn it off. Don't stick your hand in there. There is a bracket that holds the pad down with a screw set. If your finger gets caught in that, it's going to hurt. So just on the safe side, if you drop it and it's rolling around, don't try to grab it with your hand. Just turn it off and then grab it. If you can turn it back on at that point, and you start all over. If you drop it and you get scratched up or dinged up from that metal band, you might have to start all over at a lower grit size. Lower grit size to work your way back up because of that abrasion that it created. So take your time. If your hand gets tired, switch, take a break, or whatever you need to do. Teamwork is going to help here. One will be holding it, the other one will be pouring the water or placing the. So after going through the polishing process, we've cleaned it up, rinsed it off, dried it off, and we're going to apply the nitinol solution. So nitric acid mixed with methanol. Right? We're going to etch this. Somebody can take out a timer for me. We're going to etch this for approximately 30 to 40 seconds, depending on its visual appearance, and then we're going to neutralize it with a methanol after that time frame. So I'm going to go ahead and open the container. I'm just going to take, I don't have to get a copious amount here, just enough to cover the surface of the material or the metal. So 1 drop, 2 drop, start the timer. We'll notice that the surface actually changes in appearance, the color. One's a little bit darker than the other. What are we on time?
15.
15 seconds, so give it a little bit more. It's looking pretty good, I think. on the etching. It's going to turn a little bit darker the longer that we leave it.
Time.
So we're at 30 seconds. So
Things are probably put on.
just going to neutralize it with some methanol. Cover enough of that surface. Should neutralize everything there. Place enough to where we won't have any issues. The methanol will evaporate. We're going to speed up the evaporation process with applying some air. Just enough of the air to evaporate all of the methanol, any residual that is left over. Should be good there. We'll close the fume hood. You'll notice that the etching has changed the surface coloration. So after etching, we're going to go ahead and look through the microscope at a good magnification to focus on the grain size themselves. We notice on the image, it's a little hard to see each individual grain. There's a lot of large voids, but we can't see an individual grain. It's a little tough to see. There's a few of them that are there that we can see, and we're going to have to measure those specific sizes. This is the first one of the bolts that you're going to be looking at. You're going to do the exact same process and procedure on the second bolt. You need to focus the microscope on it, find the specific grains, and then measure each of those grains and go through a comparison. So on the first one, this is a larger grain size that we're looking at currently right now. And what you're going to do in order to find the grain size specifically, we're going to hit measure, main measure area. We're going to do a diameter. Hit diameter, and you need to find a clear enough grain that you can see entirely with its grain boundary surrounding it. So it might take some time to find one, but I think there's one right here. There's a pretty decent sized one that looks enclosed entirely that we can use. I'm going to click one edge to the other edge, make a second click, and I'm going to adjust my size of circle to approximate that grain size. I'm going to click a third time. There's my first grain size at 1.3 micrometers. You'll do that 4 more times for this sample. You'll revert to the second bolt, find a clear enough image, and repeat the process over again.